Hello my loves, Tony here from TL Yarn Crafts and welcome back. So last weekend I found myself in a predicament I'm sure many of my fellow yarn lovers will know all too well. You're working away on your project, you're doing so great, and you realize you are one skein away from the finish line. No worries though, yarn store is right up the street, we're gonna get in, get out, no problem. So you grab your keys, you hop in the car, head to the yarn store, and then in the parking lot, you have to give yourself the pep talk. You know, it goes a little something like, I know exactly what I need, I'm gonna get in, get out, no problem. You're feeling really confident when you walk in, and thanks to a lovely woman named Cheryl, hey girl, you find exactly what you need immediately, and then you head to the register. Everyone lives happily ever after in the end, right? Wrong. I looked over to the left and saw some of the most scrumptious yarn I've ever seen in a JOANN. And at that moment, my inner yarn snob, she took over. To say I blacked out inside that JOANN would be an understatement, but good thing for you, I brought all that yarn home and I'm excited to share it with you in this special edition Yarn Snob review. For each of the 8 yarns that I picked up, I'm gonna tell you my initial reaction, likes and dislikes, and give it a rating of 1 out of 10 hooks. If you are all about that yarn snob life, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I made a very lofty goal of reaching 1 million subs by the end of the year, and my Gemini spirit tells me I can still do it. A few folks did recently mention that they thought they were subscribed to my channel and somehow got unsubscribed, so I figure now is probably a good time to check. And with that out of the way, it's time for your resident yarn snob to put in some work. Now, if you're ever curious about the yarns or the hooks that I'm using throughout this video, please drop down to the description. I've included links to everything. Let's start this party with Lazy Days Thick and Quick. Meet Lazy Days Thick and Quick from Lion Brand. It's a category 6 super bulky weight tube yarn made from 100% polyester. One 250 gram skein clocks in at $14.99 full price and gives you 125 silky yards. You get to choose from 15 highly saturated, even colors that were made for the summertime and beyond. At first glance, this looks like a ribbon yarn, but it's actually a solid knit tube that's filled with what looks like roving. The roving is loosely packed, adding a surprising flexibility to the strand that you don't often get from yarns this heavy. It's machine washable and dryable, so you can thank the homies at Lion Brand for that. Now, before I tell you all the reasons that I love Lazy Days Thick and Quick, let me take you back in time, 2 years to be exact, when I reviewed the original Lazy Days in a Yarn Snob review. I gushed over the smooth feel, the superb stitch definition, and the light sheen of the yarn. I remarked that it was a stunner that I wish would stay on shelves if only it were offered in a heavier weight and in deeper colors. Lo and behold, someone was listening because they nailed it with Lazy Days Thick and Quick. This beefy version gives you the same tubular construction with a light sheen, but in a usable palette of 15 shades. If you're used to using t-shirt yarn for projects like bags and rugs, let me slide a little bit of Lazy Days Thick and Quick your way. The polyester casing is soft and pliable, making it wonderfully effortless to crochet with. This is in stark contrast to traditional cotton t-shirt yarn, which can be murder on your hands and your joints. I usually make a small swatch to test yarns for my videos, but I did not want to stop stitching with Lazy Days. I'll gladly give it 9 out of 10 hooks. The improved color palette and heavier weight mean that I can go nuts on crochet baskets, oversized bags, even cute little bucket hats. I could also see this used for home decor like chunky pillows or a picnic blanket. They did give me a deep teal that I asked for, but I still don't see my hot pink or my chocolate brown. Now there's still opportunity for them to expand the color range, and I really do hope that they do so. This is a unique and gorgeous yarn that deserves a place in your warm weather stash. Now my first make with Lazy Days is a no-brainer. It's gotta be the Jessie Stash basket, and I'm gonna make one in every color. Where Lazy Days is silky smooth, Cloudpaca will catapult you to a fuzzy daydream. This category 4 worsted weight yarn is a blend of alpaca, superwash merino wool, and polyamide. Each 50 gram ball holds 164 yards and it's gonna set you back $7.99 each. You get to choose from 12 pretty standard colors. Taking a closer look at the yarn strand, the casing is a thin, wispy tube of knit lace, which I'm guessing is the polyamide. Then a combination of wool and alpaca are blown inside of the casing, resulting in a yarn that is light as air. You're gonna need to hand wash this, but it's gonna be well worth the trouble. If you're not a fan of textured, fuzzy yarns like this, feel free to leave it behind for the rest of us, because boy, oh boy, this yarn is nice. I didn't know whether to crochet with it or just squish it to death. It is unbelievably light and bouncy compared to many alpaca-based yarns that I've tried. It has a noticeable airiness, mainly from the way the yarn is constructed. To be so fuzzy and netted, it was surprisingly easy to Tunisian crochet with this yarn, even with my sharp metal hooks. There was very little splitting and the stitches were able to glide over my hook easily for the forward and the return pass. But when I stopped to admire the swatch, honey, that is when she took my breath away. This color is called whipped cream and that's exactly what it looks like. Light, fluffy, but still opaque if you want it to be. Fuzzy yarns are notorious for lacking stitch definition, but that wasn't the case here. You can see those vertical lines of the simple stitch dancing up the swatch and begging you to finish just one more row. Cloudpaca also gets 9 out of 10 very happy hooks from me. Finding a yarn like this at JOANN was unexpected, but it makes total sense. Since I first found the K+C brand, it seems like they've tried to make yarns that buck this assumption that good yarn can only be found at local yarn stores. They're one brand that seems intentional about making luxury yarns accessible to all, and they've proved that to us again and again. When I look at Cloudpaca, fantasies of gauzy sweaters and feather-light throw blankets dance in my head, and it makes me want to go buy out the store. If they wanted to improve this yarn, my first suggestion is going to be with the colors. The palette feels pretty standard for an alpaca-based yarn, so I'd love to see the developers think a little bit outside the box. But that's just me being nitpicky. Cloudpaca is amazing and only loses 1 point for being a yarn that I would have to relegate to the colder months. When I do pick up Cloudpaca, I'm going to be making a Dina Cardi so I can live my ethereal princess fantasy. Now it's time to stop this love fest and talk about Juicy Couture Luxe Velour Sparkle. It's a category 5 bulky weight polyester velvet yarn with sporadic spots of silver glitter throughout. Each 100-gram skein holds 107 yards and costs $9.99. JOANN had 10 different colors in the palette of mostly pinks, with some deeper greens and blues, and then they added black and white to the mix. The strand is made like most commercial velvet yarns, with this taut string in the middle holding onto the short velour fibers. It is machine washable, but be sure to lay it flat to dry or you might have a mess on your hands. Now, I am probably the worst person to ask about a yarn like this because I've always disliked velvet yarns. I remember when I first saw these yarns back in 2018 and I thought, oh my gosh, they're so soft and they're so lovely. They must be fun to crochet with. I could not be more mistaken. These yarns split, they fray, they shed, and they have 0 stitch definition. And my experience was no different with this Juicy Couture stuff. I'm not a plushie maker, and I feel like that's the only reason a crocheter should be picking up these yarns. Now, my barometer for a redeemable yarn is a granny square. It's my safe place, my comfort stitch, if you will. It's a personal preference that's never steered me wrong before. Surprisingly, I didn't mind making this square. I didn't have to hunt for what stitches to work into, and the lightness of the velvet played nicely with my metal hook. But while this square was fun to make, it was 0 fun to look at. How do you lose the stitch definition of double crochet stitches? The whole thing looked like a blobby mess and I could not stand it. You know, maybe this would be better as a bigger project, but I don't have the patience nor the interest to find out. Juicy Couture Luxe Velour Sparkle gets a 5 out of 10 hook rating from me. I get that the manufacturers tried to make this special by adding the sparkle, but at the end of the day, it's a velvet yarn, plain and simple. And there are plenty others out there with better colors and better price tags. Also, why Juicy Couture? Now, I've worn my share of velour hoodie sets, but I don't want to relive that era in my yarn. It felt like this weird nostalgic reach that just fell completely flat for me. Being the stubborn crocheter and designer that I am, I set out to conquer velour yarn some time ago, and I did that with my Oxford Floor Poofs. You can find this pattern inside my book, The Tunisian Crochet Handbook. 4th on the list is Big Twist T-shirt. These jumbo skeins hold 131 yards of super bulky weight yarn. The 400-gram skeins of 100% polyester yarn come in 14 vibrantly saturated colors and are going to set you back $12.99 each full price. At first glance, this yarn looks a lot like Lazy Days, but it's actually more like a tape yarn that's been lightly stretched to encourage it to curl a little bit. Now, you can machine wash it, but it is recommended that you lay it flat to dry. One of the first things I noticed before taking this yarn out of the skein was how spongy and stretchy it felt, so I knew it wasn't just your average t-shirt yarn. Personally, I'm not a big fan of t-shirt yarn. Usually it's made from 100% cotton, so it's really stiff, it has no stretch, and it ends up being so rough on my hands and joints, forcing me to take a lot of breaks. Big Twist t-shirt is like night and day compared to classic t-shirt yarn. The ribbon is soft, it's flexible, and it's super smooth to the touch and while stitching. I didn't have to use half the force I usually employ when I work with t-shirt yarn, which was a welcome discovery. The stitch definition is unreal. You get this true sense of the dimension of your stitches while working just a half double crochet. Recycled fibers are popping up more and more on our yarn shelves, but my experience with them so far has been mixed. While I love that companies are taking measurable strides toward eco-consciousness, the texture of the fiber often suffers. But that's not the case with Big Twist t-shirt. Much to the opposite, I have never experienced recycled polyester that feels like this. I wonder if it's because this yarn is more an alternative to cotton versus recycled polyester that is often being produced to feel like wool. Either way, I'm 100% here for it. Now, after I fastened off one of the loveliest swatches I ever made, I knew I had to give Big Twist t-shirt a perfect 10 hook rating. The 14 vibrant colors had a lot to do with that. It's a really balanced palette with brights and neutrals that are appropriate for the season, and the use of recycled polyester and the unbelievable softness of the yarn makes it a cheaper and easier alternative than even making your own t-shirt yarn. Now, this would be appropriate for classic t-shirt yarn projects like bags and baskets, but I'd also love it for craft show impulse buys like keychains, pacifier clips, and chapstick holders. If you've been nervous to try t-shirt yarn or you think it's going to be too rough on your hands, Big Twist t-shirt awaits you. Now, if you need some inspo for Big Twist t-shirt, try my Kensington tote bag. You can find the full pattern inside my book, The Tunisian Crochet Handbook. K+C is fighting for space in your yarn stash, and they make that all too clear with their essential wool. This category 4 worsted weight yarn packs 84 yards into adorable 50-gram balls. It's made with 100% superwash merino wool and costs $7.99 per skein. You get to choose from 16 colors that read classic rather than boring. The smooth yarn consists of 9 2-ply strands, resulting in a yarn that bounces like a trampoline. The fact that it's machine washable is like a sweet little cherry on top. The concept of high-ply yarns is not new for most of us yarn snobs. The first one that comes to mind for me is Lion Brand's Wool Spun, rest in peace. If you take animal fibers and spin them very thin, then ply a whole bunch of them together, you get a lofty yarn from all the air that exists between the fibers. But what is new and novel about this yarn is seeing something like this at JOANN at this price. It's bouncy, it's stretchy, and it flows so smoothly while stitching that you can barely tell the yarn is even there. I went with a crochet bean stitch to try this yarn out, and it took to the texture like a champ. These tiny beans really pop with such a spongy yarn, and the stitch definition was superb as expected from anything with such a high ply count. If you love color work and really want your motifs to pop, reach for a yarn like Essential Wool. While there's lots to love about this yarn, there is certainly some opportunity for improvement, right? Though the price is reasonable, I wish the 50-gram skein could go a little bit further. This is a really plump worsted weight. It's kind of teetering into that Aran weight category. And I love a good Aran weight, but something this scrumptious, it needs to be savored. So a DK weight or at least a lighter worsted would be more my speed. I also think there's a lot of missed opportunity for the color palette. I wouldn't remove any colors, but I'd certainly add some. Like how gorgeous would a spicy chartreuse or a rusty orange look with this squishy base? Phenomenal, I'd say. Overall, this is a great yarn and deserves every bit of a 9 out of 10 hook rating. My criticisms serve only to make this yarn better in hopes that it'll stay around a little bit longer. The sky is the limit when it comes to projects made with essential wool. It is begging to become your favorite squishy sweater, but it would be right at home as a cozy throw blanket or your next favorite winter hat. Personally, I'm reaching for K+C Essential Wool for a Tony cuffed cardi. The close fit and rolled cuffs of this cardigan will benefit immensely from the squish of a yarn like Essential Wool. K+C is keeping their foot on our necks with Superwash Wool Luxe, a sport weight single ply merino wool that looks eerily familiar. The chunky 100-gram skein holds 215 yards and will cost you $14.99 each full price. It's got one of the bigger color palettes of this bunch with 18 options to choose from. You'll find mainly tonal shades, but there are a few variegated shades like these purples in the mix. The Superwash treatment means you can machine wash it, but be sure to lay it flat to dry. If you took off the K+C label, wound this yarn into a hank, and slapped a Malabrigo worsted label on it, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's got that same Malabrigo dye style, single ply construction, and a light twist. It's even got nearly the same yardage, with the Malabrigo skein holding just 5 less yards per skein. So how is this one a sport weight and Miss Brigo is an Aran weight? Make it make sense, y'all. If it was up to me, I would put both of those yarns at a DK weight, but you'll have to be the judge. I've got an okay relationship with roving yarn. I find it to be good for some things and bad for most others. A lot of my frustration with it doesn't come from the actual crochet process, which is quite enjoyable with this yarn. Instead, I go bonkers over how delicate roving is when you're handling it. It gets very fuzzy very easily, making repeated frogging a chore. It also doesn't hold up well over time, becoming horribly pilled at the slightest bit of friction. So that's going to take projects like sweaters, blankets, and baby items off the table, making roving only truly appropriate for accessories. Now, I've experienced the horrors of pairing single ply yarn with the wrong project, and I tend to see roving as more trouble than it's worth. But I do respect how K+C is making the full spectrum of fibers accessible to the average maker, which I think is critically important. So I'm giving Superwash Wool Luxe a respectable 7 out of 10 hook rating on principle. Yarns like this should exist at our big box stores, right next to your acrylics and your cottons. Choice is the name of the game, and K+C is making that happen for us. What will stay and what will go is so unpredictable, so if you want some of this yarn, you better go get some ASAP. As much as I complained about this yarn, I know the right project would really make it sing. And I think that project could be the Montego shawl. Find the pattern on my blog. Taking it back to Big Twist, we have Rave. What do you know? Another single ply yarn begging to go home with you. This time we have 312 yards of worsted weight yarn in a 150 gram cake. The ball band says premium acrylic, and honey, I still don't know exactly what that means. Premium or not, you're gonna pay $6.99 each, and you get to pick from 10 color changing options that have preteen written all over them. After a little investigating, I found the strand to be roving with a tight twist over a couple white strands that are holding everything together. Very interesting. I've never seen anything like that before. You can machine wash items made with Rave, but be sure to lay them flat to dry. Honey, I'm gonna be real honest with you. I know what Big Twist was going for with this one, but they fell a little bit short. Let me explain. For everything that I don't like about roving yarns, this yarn took my grievances and said, hold my beer. Like, how can roving get even worse? There's no softness to speak of. It feels like sandpaper to stitch with, and the swatch feels even worse on my skin. It also has very little real drape. Instead, it just kind of falls like dead weight, which is not what you want to see after hours and hours of stitching. But it's not all doom and gloom. Even with my biases against roving yarn, I can still appreciate that this yarn is quite pretty, which is what caught my eye initially under JOANN's fluorescent lights. This unicorn colorway really piqued my interest considering I have a 9-year-old niece. She would flip for this yarn. And being her auntie, I would suffer through every miserable stitch to make her something that she loves. I worked over just a small swatch for this demo, but I can visualize how gorgeous it would be in a corner-to-corner blanket or a sweet hat and scarf set. Yarns like this need to exist for charity makes and for kids things. And while it wouldn't be the first yarn I reached for, the value and aesthetic appeal make it worth having on the shelf. Big Twist Rave gets a 6 out of 10 hook rating from me. I'm still very conflicted about this yarn, and I don't think I'll ever personally pick it up again, but if I did, I would be making my Mocha Ripple Afghan. I have a feeling that the broad stripes will let the smooth color changes of this yarn really shine. I had no qualms about putting Big Twist Prism in my cart, and thankfully she lived up to the hype. It comes in a whopping 200 gram cake and offers 273 yards of 100% acrylic yarn. This category 4 worsted weight yarn will cost you $8.99 each full price and gives you 6 colors to choose from. The strand is 2 ply, with each ply being a different color. Each ply has slow color changes, adding to the subtle or overt tonality of each colorway. Prism is machine washable, but you'll need to lay it flat to dry. Now this This is what I wanted Rave to be: soft, squishy, flexible. I don't work with a lot of full acrylic yarns anymore, but when I do, these are the boxes that I want to check. Prism is the yarn you pick up when you crochet with your eyes first. It practically jumps off the shelf with these mesmerizing colors, the silky feel, and the light sheen. With 200 grams in each skein, it's like getting 2 skeins for the price of 1, which is quite a steal considering that most JOANN yarns are perpetually on sale. Now, I figured Prism would be nice to crochet with, but honey, not this nice. The 2 plies with medium twist didn't split or snag on me, not once. This colorway specifically has quick, seamless color changes that are mesmerizing in the swatch. It's another one from this batch that I just didn't want to put down. This swatch turned out way bigger than I expected because I was trying to pinpoint where the color transitions were happening. But Prism, she's just too smooth. And if you think this yarn looks great up close, just imagine taking it into a full project. I can just see the colors glowing and dancing all over. It's a ride that I'm willing to sign up for. Prism gets 8 out of 10 hooks from me. It's top tier as far as acrylics go, but I'm still left feeling a little bit of that plasticiness that acrylic leaves behind. As with most acrylics that are so loosely spun, I'm also concerned about how the fabric is going to hold up over time. I am fully enamored with these colors and would be heartbroken to lose the effect due to pilling or overall fuzziness. Replicate this color style on some Superwash merino wool and I will gladly give it some space in my yarn stash. I think Prism would work well for most projects. Home goods like blankets and pillows are a given. I could also see it elevating some simple accessories like beanies and prayer shawls. I'd even consider it for garments. Just leave some ventilation in your stitches since acrylic loves to lock in heat. As for me, I'd be turning Prism into an Arvada wrap. I'm just imagining how glorious it would be to see those color changes radiating out from this oversized triangle wrap. What started as an unexpected shopping spree has turned into me discovering some yarns that I definitely want to make space for in my stash. I had very high hopes for many of these yarns and thankfully they did rise to the occasion. And it's really nice to see because honestly, JOANN had me shaking in my boots for about the last year. There were so many murmurings about bankruptcies and stores closing that I thought I was going to lose my favorite local yarn store forever. But looking at this yarn today, it's letting me know that someone at these companies is still standing and ready to deliver for us yarn lovers. The only bummer here is knowing that K+C and Big Twist retire yarns so very quickly. It's tough to know what's going to stick around and what's going to fade away. Many of these yarns are likely to retire in the coming months, but with fall right around the corner, you best believe I'm going to be packing my shelves with Cloudpaca and Essential Wool. The prices are just too good. Now I want to know what you think. Drop down in the comments and tell me everything. Which of these yarns are you going to pick up and which of them would you never pick up? I saw the many emails, DMs, and requests for me to bring Yarn Snob reviews back, so I'm very, very happy to be doing this. It's a nice chance for me to try new yarns, but I hope that it does inspire you to stretch out of your comfort zone and try some of the yarns that I've mentioned. As always, if you have yarns that you want me to review, let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching and I'll see y'all next time. Bye. Bye y'all.